So, today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how people pleasing can show up in your relationships. And I say a little bit because I feel like I could talk forever about attachment and relationship stuff relating to people pleasing. So, for this episode, I'm going to be as concise as I can and specifically focus on talking the why behind why you might ignore your own boundaries or suppress your own needs in relationships because of a feeling of being seen as being difficult or being rejected or maybe being perceived as different. And what inspired this was I recently saw a post on Instagram by Jimmy on relationships. If you're not aware of his page, do check it out. It's really helpful. But he was role playing a situation between a woman and a man in a relationship, and the woman was questioning the man about his viewing of naked photos of other women on the internet and of liking other women's posts and things like that. Basically, the role play involved her asking him like why he thought it was acceptable to look at naked women online and like these photos of other girls whilst in a relationship. And he was role playing this, and instead of acknowledging her feelings, the guy was shown to be dismissing her, saying she was being insecure and that it was totally normal to look at other women and to like them and things like that. And it just got me thinking about how, as a people pleaser, you might relate to this in terms, you might relate to that scenario, but even if it's not that scenario, you might relate to the fact that you pretend you're okay with something in your relationship when actually you're really uncomfortable with it. But you pretend you're okay because you think that's how you should be, that you should dismiss the discomfort if the thing making you uncomfortable appears to be normal. It appears to be normalized within the environment or society or culture that you grew up in. So you don't feel like you almost have the right to say anything. Or you might put on a bit of a laid back front to avoid confrontation and avoid rocking the boat. So, I want to talk a bit about why people pleasers might do this, the consequences it can have, and most importantly, how you can start moving towards a healthier, more authentic way of showing up in relationships. So, if you're someone who struggles with people pleasing, this might all sound all too familiar, perhaps. You might find yourself nodding along when your partner does something or says something that deep down doesn't sit right with you. Maybe they cross the line or they dismiss your feelings. And instead of speaking up, you convince yourself it's easier to keep quiet. You might tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, or if I say something, I'll seem insecure or needy or nagging. And I've been there in the past, and I know that feeling all too well from when I was a people pleaser. You might find that you ignore things because it feels like it's something to do with you rather than them. You might think it's my issue. Other people don't seem to have a problem with it, so it must be something to do with me. So, in situations like the one in Jimmy's video, you might find that you would start to rationalize your partner's behavior and justify it to yourself when they start to perhaps dismiss your concerns. It can all be all too easy. I'm being too sensitive, or it's easy to think maybe this is normal and I'm making a big deal out of nothing here. And this inner dialogue can become a way of ignoring that uneasy feeling you have in your gut. And as a people pleaser, that's something that you probably know all too well about, like pushing down those initial instincts, because over the years you've been taught not to trust those feelings, or you've been told to maybe ignore them for the sake of other people. So no wonder it feels like it's a you problem rather than them, or an actual problem. So let's talk about the struggle to set boundaries. When you're prone to people pleasing, there's often a strong fear of rejection. Maybe you grew up learning that your worth was tied to how agreeable or accommodating you were, or perhaps you were made to feel that your own needs weren't as important as everyone else's. So then in relationships, you probably find that that pattern often repeats itself. You start to feel that in order to be loved or accepted, you need to be easygoing. You want to be accepted, even if it means ignoring things that feel wrong to you. People pleasers often internalize the belief that expressing discomfort and setting boundaries will push other people away. And this can make you settle for situations perhaps that don't fit with your values or just feel uncomfortable for you. You might find yourself thinking things like, oh, if I make a fuss about it, they're going to leave me. Or it's easier or better to just let it go than to risk confrontation. But deep down, what you're really doing is you're telling yourself that your feelings don't matter. When you repeatedly ignore your true feelings or dismiss your own boundaries, it can have a pretty serious impact on your well-being and on the relationship itself, because you start doubting yourself, you're all confused, you're suppressing stuff that you want to say. There's a lot of fear that's then activated within you. And holding back how you really feel often, understandably, leads to resentment. Even if you're not fully conscious of it at first, over time you might notice a simmering sense of frustration or feeling neglected that's going to start bubbling up and coming out in other ways. Maybe in passive aggressive comments that you make, or feeling constantly anxious around your partner, overthinking, overanalyzing, or maybe even slowly distancing yourself because it feels too much. And this suppression also leads to a pattern where you're constantly abandoning your own needs in favor of keeping the peace. And it's exhausting to put on a mask, and it's so draining to act like everything's fine when really you're hurting inside and it's not fine at all. You know that. And what's more, when you don't express your true self, your partner can't actually have the opportunity to truly know or understand how you're feeling or what you need. And that leaves the relationship then feeling one-sided or pretty hollow, because in a way, you're hiding your real true self from them. So, how do you begin to even break this pattern and bring your authentic self into your relationship? So, first, it starts with getting comfortable with your own feelings. So, listening to that inner voice that tells you when something isn't quite right, something isn't okay, even if it's just a whisper. Learning to trust that voice is crucial. You might start by asking yourself questions like, how does this really make me feel right now? Or, what would I say to a friend who is in this situation? Would I be okay for them if they were in this situation or their partner was doing this? Or if I wasn't worried about their reaction, my partner's reaction, or the impact on the relationship, what would I actually be saying about this? And then I suppose the next step is practicing small moments of being honest with how you're feeling, even when it feels uncomfortable, which I know is easier said than done. And it doesn't mean going like straight into a confrontation with your partner. If that feels too overwhelming, it's not about that. It could start with simply acknowledging to yourself how you feel. So actually saying to yourself, yeah, I don't feel okay with this. And then when you're ready to express your feelings in a way that's true to you without minimizing or apologizing for them, for example, instead of saying, oh, maybe I'm being silly, but I know this is just me, but try saying, this is how I feel and it's important to me. Or a good stock statement from assertive communication would be something like, when you do X, it makes me feel Y. I'd really appreciate it if you would do Z instead. And remember, with relationships, they're the healthiest when both people are seen and understood for who they truly are and how they truly feel. So try and frame it that by speaking up, you are giving your partner a chance to respond in a way that's respectful and understanding, because they might not have a clue how you're really feeling. And if they don't respond with respect or understanding, then that's valuable information for you too. Underneath this people pleasing tendency is often a lack of self worth, a sense that your needs aren't as important as others. So when you start building that self worth, even in small ways, you're better able to see then that your boundaries deserve to be respected and your worth being heard. So, setting boundaries isn't about being difficult, it's about respecting yourself and creating healthy space for a relationship where people can show up authentically and create an authentic, real connection. So boundaries might feel, they do feel intimidating at first if you're not used to it. Of course they do. I've been there myself. I'm so aware when I'm saying all this, it's easier said than done. But think of boundaries as a way of nurturing the relationship rather than shutting it down. Because when you communicate openly, you give both you and your partner that opportunity to understand each other better and connect on a deeper level. So it's not all just surface level or things brushed under the carpet or pretense. Authenticity is what brings and builds like real intimacy and connection. And over time, you'll find the more authentic you can be, the more over time you'll find that the people who enter your life will be the ones that value you and will appreciate and respect your boundaries. So that was a little, like I say, a short episode on a subject that I could cover in many episodes, but I hope it's been helpful for you. And thank you for listening or watching if you're watching this on YouTube. I hope it's helped you to reflect on how people pleasing might be impacting your relationship. And more importantly, I hope it's maybe encouraged or inspired you to start thinking a bit more about your own feelings in your relationship and perhaps boundaries that you want to set but you've not yet set. Just remember that being true to yourself is the foundation of a healthy, fulfilling relationship. There's so many people in relationships, you might be familiar with family or friends that, like I say, they just sweep things under the carpet, things go left unsaid, resentment simmers, bitterness simmers, and it's just not an authentic connection. Whereas when you start opening up, expressing how you feel with someone who respects that, it's just amazing how healthy attachment and healthy relationships can flourish then. And I appreciate that not everyone is in a relationship where they feel safe or are safe to bring up matters that they're unhappy with or to express a disagreement with their partner. And if that is you, and again, it's easier said than done, and I know I've said that phrase so many times this episode, but please do consider just speaking to someone that you do trust and seeking some support from them with that. If you have found this episode helpful, please do share, subscribe, or comment. And let me know if there is anything else you want me to include in my content. I'm always open to ideas. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you soon.